You are now tuned in to the Cosmic Convos podcast, your number one source for accurate, relevant, and thought-provoking astrological conversations in the podcast nation. The place where stars and minds align.
Peace. You're now tuned into the Cosmic Convos podcast. I'm your humble host, Herut, and I got my good brother here, Brother Ra. How you doing?
Brother, living, learning, and applying. How about yourself?
Hey, man. Like I always say, man, trying to get like you, my brother, man. Trying to make my next day better than the day before and all that good stuff.
Hey, man, I heard you on my trail, brother. I'm getting worried.
No worries, man. That trail is long, man. You know, almost ran out of breath. trying to run down. Indeed. But before we get too far, I want to remind you all, make sure that you subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, like this video, share with your people and everything like that, so we can take this thing to the next level. And this episode is brought to you by Push It Forward Media Group, Capricorn Astrology, and our good people over there on Patreon. Big up to y'all. Or whatnot, you know. And if you haven't checked it out yet, the Patreons, your patrons, check out that episode we dropped this morning or whatnot, you know. And like I said, we're gonna keep it pushing with that. Some new changes and stuff is coming up with the Patreon. More on that later or whatnot. But you know, if you want to connect with the Patreon, or you want to, you know, check us out on all the other platforms and stuff like that, you can follow us on Instagram at Push It Forward, PUSHITFWD. Follow this podcast specifically at Cosmic Convo, and that's COSMICCONVO. You see that scrolling at the bottom of the screen right there. There you can find all the links that's relative to what we got going on. Brother Ra, how can the people get a hold of you?
Same three platforms, same three ways. Astrology at gmail.com, IG or Facebook via Shechem Ra. Any one of those would definitely get at me. And people have been using it quite often, quite consistently, so it works well.
Indeed. So, here we are, season 4, episode 16 or whatnot. Before we get into today's episode, last episode, man, I got some pretty good feedback with that. A lot of people really enjoyed that topic. What's the type of feedback you been getting on that last episode?
It's definitely good feedback. We did a little bit more in depth than we did the first go around, so I was pleased, and you know, a lot of my students were pleased as well. So I definitely got some good responses on that.
Indeed. I mean, because we haven't really did an actual episode just on that alone, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
We've been dancing around it or whatnot, and it's still way more that can be. I mean, that USA chart got a lot of different. I mean, you can there's so many different angles you can address that topic. You know, I don't know if we'll ever run out of stuff to talk about in regards to the American chart.
Just imagine doing just a whole show on the dashas of the American of the chart of America, because each dasha is going to reveal blow by blow exactly what's happened, because we're in a Rahu dasha now, and
right,
you can see, right. We've been getting requests, by the way, for that. I've survived Rahu dasha shirt, so you know, definitely got some people chiming on that.
Yeah, man. It's coming. All right, it's coming. It's coming. I'm gonna just sit down, go ahead and get it done. We need to work on the design and everything like that. I actually, speaking of merch or whatnot, I always got a shirt on or whatnot. But I reason why I haven't really been pushing the merch too much because I am actually trying to find you know, um, the best service in regards to creating the merch. So there's a couple of them that I've been teasing out and stuff like that. So I've been ordering it and just trying to see which one is giving the best deal with the best quality and everything like that. I think I may have found it, but I'm still tinkering a couple things with it. So be on the lookout for that or whatnot. But yeah, man, that's a real shirt, man. Rahu Dasha ain't no joke.
Everybody that I know that's in it, that's going through it or has gone through it, has the same testimony. Whoa.
Right.
Yeah, I can speak
And
from experience, so I know, right?
yeah, I'm right. I'm in my what I guess I don't know maybe last 8 years of my last 7 years of my Rahu Dasha right now. I see why it's necessary though. I get it. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like it could be weird. You could be weird. You understand what I'm saying? But I could see what's happening. What are you learn? You know what I mean? It's like it's for me personally. I'm learning things. You understand what I'm saying?
But you would, given where your Rahu is. Or see,
Right.
yeah, my Rahu's a whole different ball game, right? So when you got Rahu in the 6th, 8th, or 12th, yeah, and I mean, granted, right? If you got it in houses that aren't those types of houses, you're still gonna have a ride. But imagine in the 6th, 8th, or 12th house, it's yeah, yeah. I had it. Mine's in the 2nd house, so you know what I mean. It was a ride. But yeah, if you got it anywhere in those specific houses, you're definitely feeling the impact or have felt the impact.
Right. Right. So yeah, man. Shout out to Rahu. Rahu. Oh, I got another shirt. I don't Rahu. I don't want no smoke. I don't want no smoke.
Yeah, that's definitely one because it ain't nothing but smoke up in Rahu, boy.
Indeed, indeed. But before we get all the way into today's topic, did you have anything that you wanted to mention or talk about before we jump into the topic for today?
Just a quick side note, right? That when when Jupiter goes into Capricorn September 14th, right? You're going to see a spike and a rise in these COVID cases, probably worse than last year. I mean, they're already saying it's worse. But what happens is, and I've noticed, when because I try to really stay out of populated places, you know.
Right.
I'm cautious of where I move just because, things happen. And not only just because of COVID, but just in general, I try to make sure that I'm in specific spaces and places and times that are most conducive to my destiny. So when you have Jupiter, which is a planet of faith, but it gives us a faith that kind of leads into confidence. I don't know if you noticed, and I've noticed, but there's a lot of people that just have forsaken the mask process. And I'm like, well, okay, I'm feeling you, right. I understand Jupiter is definitely doing his thing, but when it gets into that debilitation until November 20th, you're going to see, and remember, this is flu season. So you're going to see back to back notifications, news reports, and things of such that you're going to see the spike go up because there's going to be this false confidence, this false sense of security, and people are going to drop their guard. And you're going to literally get a chance to see what Jupiter feels like when, or does, what it does when you've had it in a somewhat neutral position to when it goes back into a debilitated position. Watch and see what happens, and protect yourself, protect your family, protect your loved ones. Mask up, play safe, social distance. Don't go into unnecessary places unless don't go places unless you have to, because it's not over. And I told you, until we get Jupiter into Aries, which will burn up and heat up that liver energy of Kalapurusha, right? Then it's going to literally be a roller coaster ride. You're going to see ups and downs, highs and lows until we get this thing stabilized. And it's going to be with us, but at least we'll be able to fight back when Jupiter is in Aries.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's yeah, you're right. I mean, some people have started to kind of, you know, um started to take it back serious again a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. I mean, there are a lot of people who are still out here thugging.
COVID thugging.
COVID thugging or whatnot, so yeah, definitely take heed to that because it's not over at all. At all. Or whatnot. And it's like, it's interesting though, and it could be just me because I haven't really been, too tuned into the news like that. But it's like the cases and everything is, they're rising, hitting record levels in many places. But it's still relatively quiet.
It is.
It's still kind of quiet. You know what I mean? Compared to what it was before. Before it was like, oh my gosh, the world is in. Now it's just like it's rising, but it's like you can see how media plays a huge role in the perception of what's going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Just
In every regard. In every
right.
regard when it comes to, you know, police brutality, right? When it
Mm-hmm.
comes to, um, pandemics, when it comes to all kind of different things. The media definitely has control over the pulse of the world, not just the nation, but the world. So, um, you know, uh, when even you notice the Afghanistan stuff, right?
Right.
Um, you know, other thing I want to keep say note, take not take note of, but remind you. Remember, we were the first to say that Biden is going to be under some duress towards the end of this year and next year. There have been other astrologers that have come forward since and made their statements. But if you go back to Cosmic Combos, and that's one of the dope things about this show is that you get it usually first here, right? You can get information that kind of trickles down into other areas, like when we predicted that Biden would win, right? And many others were either standing on the borderline or, on the other side. We staunchly said that Biden would win, and he won. And we've staunchly said several things. We said that Kamala wouldn't do well, right? She hasn't. They're
Right.
actually talking about where's Waldo, where's Kamala, right? um, we've said it before, and I'm not saying this to effectuate anything negative on anyone. I don't have a rat in this race, but at the same time, I do see the writing on the wall, and I'm telling you, right? Just watch. In fact, they've even, it's funny how you watch the left wing and the right wing news stations. You got CNN, which is left wing, Fox News, which is right wing. Fox News is reporting that the man was asleep. CNN said no, he was awake. He made a comment. Now I don't know about you, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not siding with either one. But I know if I was to sit here and do this and talk to you during the podcast, right, right, you wouldn't be very well tuned in, or you would take it as a sign of something's wrong, right? When a man holds his head down and he talks like this and he's answering you, right? He's either extremely tired or extremely contemplative, right? So,
Right.
right, I'm just saying, like, I'm not siding with Fox or CNN, the reports are out, but I know what my eyes see. And if a man's speaking to me in a leadership position, that in fact the most powerful position in
In the
the
land.
in the respective world, and he's nodding down, talking to me, something's amiss, something's awry. So, just watch how this unfolds. Um, when K2 begins to make its way, and it's about a degree away from his sun position. I would even say less than a degree. Towards the end of this year, next year, you're going to see some things shift with the presidency, and definitely have some things to comment on how this thing is coming to fruition. So also keep note of that. But remember, you got it here first, right?
Right. Right. Indeed. Yeah, man. I mean, he's an old man. He should be
Different joke.
sleepy. He should be sleepy. He supposed to be, chasing his grandkids or something.
Yeah, it's beyond time. Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. So, shoot, man, let's go ahead and jump into this episode of whatnot. So, as we build it, today we're talking about, a icon in the fashion world, but an interesting person in world history as well, Coco Chanel, right? And doing this show, it's not so much like we're like fans of Coco Chanel or anything like that, but these charts, these type of charts are good to look at because it's just, you look at different, life events and different, characteristics and things that, we see. And it's just these certain charts that are good case studies for it. And this is one of those charts like that. Very, very eventful life she lived. A lot of interesting people she, interacted with, and she was a part of some very interesting things as you're going to see as we go on. So let's go ahead and jump into it or whatnot.
Let's do it. So, we always start off with the ascendant, right? We never lead or diverge from that platform, because, as you all well know, and if you don't, the ascendant sets the parameters, right, for karma. Right? It sets the parameters for the life pattern to unfold. Yes, we could use the moon as the ascendant, even the sun as the ascendant, but the ascendant itself always holds and rings true with regards to what you see with the naked eye.
Right.
And she's Sagittarius ascendant, and Sagittarius are considered kind of, as you've heard probably in other shows, it's a dual sign. Right? It's dual, but it is a quadruped, right? In the general sense of the word. And so uh, quadrupeds have just this innate ability to stand strong and withhold their position. And no matter what comes at them, they seem to have just kind of almost resilience, almost the ability to just, say, no matter what, I'll be all right. And her life is a demonstration of just that, in that she has periods where, you know, for the most part, it's very, unsavory. And then it becomes almost overnight, you know, um, decadent and to an extreme wealthy. So, we're going to talk about some of the things that she goes through, but just consider Sagittarius as that sign that just gives you, a carte blanche opportunity to do well. Right? It's, I don't want to say the most intelligent sign, but they have a high level of intelligence. They think on broad terms, and she did in various ways. So, she's Mula ascendant. She's at 7 degrees, 32 minutes, some change. And Mula is a very powerful nakshatra. It's one that it's really considered the center of the galaxy, right? Not the center of the solar system, the center of the galaxy. And so this magnetic pull, this ability to hold things down, is a lot of what Mula embodies. In fact, I mean, it has a very strange kind of start to life in that it's very erratic, but also has the ability to centralize and pull things together and actually make some very powerful moves. But the thing is that it's ruled by Nariti, and you've heard me say this before. Nariti is kind of like Kali, the goddess
Mm,
of death or the goddess of calamity. A Lakshmi is another name that is
mm-hmm.
akin to this particular nakshatra. And nakshatras hold the keys to this. It's the secrets to Vedic astrology that sets it apart from Western astrology, light years.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Oh yeah.
but that 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 Nariti, you could consider it like a fierce goddess. That it doesn't really yield or buckle under pressure. It doesn't stop or fold because something goes wrong. In fact, if you start off in the position of Nariti, which is that which is considered alakshmi or unlucky, what do they say? The only way to go from the bottom is to the what?
To the top, you go up. You can go up from
Right,
here.
right. They start off at the bottom, right? They start off with a degree of, I don't want to say misfortune, but calamity to some degree, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, she's born, for all intents and purposes, dirt poor, right?
Right.
Um, she doesn't have much to start with. So when you come up from the bottom, what'd you say? She got it out the dirt. Well,
Got it out the mud.
yeah, she got it out the mud, right? It starts off from there. And, the thing about Sages, as I said, they have the ability to expand and grow fairly quickly. One
Right.
of the things I found very profound, and I think we discussed it or just briefly mentioned it, but at 6 years old, she learns how to sew. 6, right?
Right.
And my daughter's actually asking for a sewing machine right now, so I better get on it, right? We might have another, right, Coco Chanel coming, but um,
Right.
you know, at 6 years old, learning how to sew, that's a pretty phenomenal feat for a young lady, right? Um, and it goes from there, right? She starts off in a Rahu dasha. Rahu, and as we just stated, right? Rahu gets the party started, right?
Right.
Definitely. But she goes right from there into a Jupiter dasha, and it makes sense because in a Jupiter dasha is when she learns how to sew, right? Jupiter's knowledge, understanding, right? That wisdom, right? Jupiter, which rules that good old Sagittarian ascendant, it's in the eighth house, and it is in the sign of exaltation. It is, right? It's not what we consider deep debility. I mean, deep exaltation, but it is exalted, right? And that exaltation, right, gives her that extra edge. One of the things about Jupiter ascendants is that their exaltation is in the eighth house, right? That tells you a lot about what Sagittarius have come to deal with. They've come to
Mm.
learn how to change and modulate quickly, and it makes sense for the Sag to do so because, right, it's a dual sign. They naturally should learn how to change with the tides, and she
Right.
does. Right, right? She does. Um, so that Jupiter dasha lasts her for quite some time until the 1900s, and she had a rough childhood. This can always be seen by Saturn in its position. It rules the second house, which is childhood, right? It's in the sixth house of enemies, debt, right? Criminality. It's not a very savory position, although it does at least give her resilience, right? And the
Right.
ability to understand that although things may be somewhat not so great now, they can change in a moment. So,
Right.
that resilience is there. And then Saturn is looking right at her ascendant Lord, right? So it still provides a very strong process to learn early on how to endure. Now, right around, it would say 1906, right? That's when she kind of gets her jump off, her start, in the sense that she starts working. Right? And it makes sense because Saturn is in the sixth house of work, right? You can't get any, I mean, like, this is really showing you how the dasha system, specifically the king of dashas, which is Vimshatari, it is par excellence the best dasha system, because it's showing you when she starts Saturn, and of course in 1900 it begins, but in 1906 she begins to work, right? She starts to work, and I believe it's she's in a parlor, like a spa, or like some type of um, like uh, like a where you, like, back in those days, right? It's different because, considering, right, in 1900, I mean, you didn't have like all of the amenities that you would have today, but at
Right.
the same time, right? I mean, she does. Excuse me. It is a spa. Excuse me. It is a spa resort. She starts at a spa resort, and think about it from this perspective. Saturn is in the sixth house, which is work, but it's also in the sign of Taurus. And what does Taurus deal with? Pleasure
Money. Well,
and
yeah,
pleasure,
pleasure.
right? Right.
Yeah.
Right. Pleasure, right? Luxury, right? Um, Feeling good about just feeling good, right? Things that are tangibly felt, right, is all about Taurus. So she's in that spa, and in that spa, right, I'm sure she gets some interesting lessons, right?
Right.
But
Some interesting.
right, but in the Saturn dasha, right, she learns some very key fundamental self knowledge, because they say that she began to try to sing, and she begins to try to sing right around in I believe in Saturn. I want to say K2 subdasha. And if you look, Saturn is in the sixth, right? K2 is in the fifth. So when this period runs, right, there is a loss or a recapitulation of what the efforts are the efforts that are put out by the individual. So that particular position teaches her that this isn't the cup of tea for you, right? Singing is not your way to go, right? And so, um, changing from that position in and I believe it's 19, I want to say '07 or '08, when she begins the Saturn Venus Dasha. Now, as I tell you, I tell my clients, I tell my students, when Venus appears, right, something that highlights relationships is going to come to fruition, good, bad, or indifferent. Well, she meets a fella, right, in this particular time period, and she begins to have an affair with the fellow in 1908. So this affair, right, starts and ensues when she begins the Saturn Venus Dasha. Saturn, right, as I said, is a planet that is going to give her a lot of self reflection, ability to really understand hard work and effort. But it comes by way, at this point, she gets some kind of some favors, some leg ups, and she ends up meeting a fella with a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you look at a chart, one of the things you always know is that the eighth house is not your money,
Other people's money.
other people's money, right? And so, Venus being in that particular degree and position gives her the connection to deal with other people's money by way of being a mistress, in fact. Right? Remember, I said Mula, right? She's a Lakshmi, but she's also Nriti. So, right, the eighth house is kind of like a connection to that in a way.
Right.
And the eighth house is things that go bump in the night.
She has
Things,
some similarities, some slight similarities to Marilyn Monroe a little bit to her chart. Just certain escapades, certain little things there. Not 100%, but there's something there.
yeah, Maryland has some planets in the eighth. Yep,
Oh yeah,
she
her
does.
eighth house is loaded.
It
I mean, it's
is.
a lot of stuff going on in that eighth house for her.
Yeah, it's lit up. And anytime the eighth house is lit up, it's for good or bad, it's gonna do what it does. I mean, her eighth house is fairly stabilized just
Yeah.
because um, she has Jupiter there, right? She has two benefics, although they are enemy planets. Yes, they're still two benefics. They're still not going to just demolish or create a great deal of harm.
Right.
Um, so, being a mistress, being a woman of the night, I don't want to say that, but I mean, she wasn't paraded around as the missus, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then here's the thing, right? At the same time, she meets another fella, another guy, and then they end up fighting over her. Right? And she knows, right? She's aware of what the boys want, of what the boys like. In fact, she mentions that they're fighting over her hot body, right? Right. So she knows what she's doing, in other words, right? This is,
Right.
Sag is not oblivious, right, to what's going on. She's quite aware of what's happening here. And so, again, eighth house is a turnstile, it switches things in an instant, right? It changes the game. It doesn't hold run of the mill type of energy. It's not a white picket fence with a dog and, in the nuclear family, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the underworld. This is the eighth house is the mafia, the mob, secret societies. So anything that is dealt with there is subverted. It's subversion. It's not above board. It's underneath the table, right?
Right.
And so, yes, she's running a Saturn dasha, but she's running a Saturn Venus dasha when she meets them, both of them. Now she's taken care of, right? She is not, it's not to say that this is the only thing that she does, because she does open up some of her own shops at this time, right? She actually becomes a hat maker. In fact, she learns how to do that at an earlier age. And so, these are some of the things that run concurrent with this process. But to show you how the dashas work, things are kind of, she does these things at the same time. But one of the things that changes her life is the loss of her partner, the loss of the fella that she was really kind of hanging with, and he was taking care of things because he had a lot of money, right? And this is the second guy that she was with. He dies, right? And so, you know, there's some patterns that when you pay attention, there's always kind of this connection to Jupiter, if you will, when someone dies. Her mother dies at the age, I believe, of 11, if I'm correct. And at that age, that's when she runs a Jupiter Moon Dasha. Jupiter is in the eighth house of death. The moon is in the sixth, well, in the eighth house from the eighth. Are you following? I know it's a little confusing for some people, but if you count 8 from the eighth, you end up at the third. The moon is there. And I know it's a little confusing even more so, but the moon is in the house of loss from the mother, meaning the fourth house is mom, the moon is in the third, so the person loses their mother during that Jupiter moon dasha. So Jupiter holds some very interesting promises around death. Not her death, but the death of those that are around her.
Right.
Right. Now, when you look at the next major death that she experiences, it's Saturn, Jupiter. And Saturn, remember, right, is in the sixth house, but it's aspecting the eighth. It's looking directly at Jupiter.
Right.
So that means that literally that Saturn, and Saturn is an older fella, older individual, older energy, and that Jupiter is in the eighth house of death or transformation. So this, as she states, changed her life. Right? It changed everything for her. And what happens is when you're switching over from one period to another, things go awry, things reorient themselves. It's changing the chapter of the book. No longer can you go back to that old life, to those old ways and those old experiences. Now there's something new. And so she begins a Mercury Dasha period that takes her into a whole nother trajectory for the next 17 years. Now, one of the interesting things that I want you to consider is that when you have planets, especially planets that are benefics in the eighth house, people give you money. They help you. In fact, like I said, it's not your money, it's someone else's money. So when she begins the Mercury Dasha period, right, although, right, remember, and during Mercury, she's still going to have these kind of interspacing periods where Venus and Jupiter are still going to interface with it. But during the Mercury Dasha period, that's when she begins to change kind of how she does things. And so in this period of time, that's when you begin to notice that she becomes more active with her hands, even more so. And the reason why I say active with her hands, because Mercury sits in the ninth directly across from the third house. Right? The third house is the house of what? It's your
Hands.
hands. Right? She has a full moon. Right? So that means that when you have a full moon, your moon is lit up. It's bright. She has a bright mind. She has a resilient emotional capacity. So she's not going to just break or bustle over because of the loss of a major person in her life. It's just she has to re-switch and change modalities. But
Right.
Mercury rules the seventh and the 10th house, and the seventh house is partners.
Right.
Right? This is when she begins to fashion the um, the symbol, right? The symbol that we see for Coco Chanel. That's when she fashions it. Is during this time. Right? During this time is when she begins to create her perfume. In fact, the perfume that she created, the bottle, was connected to the fella that had passed away, the captain that died. The
Yeah.
bottles that he had in his briefcase, she fashioned her bottles after the bottles that he had in his briefcase. So she got this idea from something from the past and brought it to the future. Right? She took that which was old and made it new. So very powerful. And yeah, that Chanel symbol is world renowned. It's world every when you see it, you know what it is. That is
Right.
her invention. And again, this is something that deals with the hands. This is something that deals with the ability to articulate, to communicate, to market yourself, to brand yourself, right? Moon in the third house does this very well. Moon in the third house knows how to brand things. They know how to express that appeal, right? And so she does so in this particular dasha period. Um, now, it's interesting because she has some connections with some people that almost for all intents and purposes robbed her. Right? Um, she basically, I mean, and there's a lot more to her life. We only have an hour at best, right? So we don't want to cover every single detail, but the major points, the major uh, things that she does, which are reminiscent around the world, right, are easy to be seen and easy to be called out during via the dasha scheme. So um, one of the things that she begins to do, and like I said, the Coco Chanel #5 piece comes after them. She does have a lot of dealings with it previously, as far as department stores and things like that. But really, she made an agreement, right? And that agreement, it basically kind of solidified the deal. Now that deal, as I said, it wasn't a great deal, but the deal was for her to have other people basically kind of take her product and make it popular, make it, um, you know, well, a worldwide name, household name.
Right.
And so, during that period, that's when the Werthenheimers, they basically put the financing behind that particular brand. And I mean, Chanel number 5 was created over 100 years ago. I want you to think about that. Other than Coca-Cola, right, and a few other brands, there's not many that still hold that power and that prestige, right?
Right.
That it holds. So that's something that is to be noteworthy. Mercury is in the ninth house, right? And the ninth house is the house of knowledge, of gurus. So even if it's done blindly, if it's done haphazardly, even if it's done not necessarily conscientiously, that particular production of what that person creates out of that house stands the test of time. Right? It can weather the storm. It can endure. So these are the powers that she's been gifted. And again, it's a very powerful thing to have when you have that moon and sun in the third and ninth axis, because it's almost like you get this kind of download and then you reflect it back to the mind in the third, and it creates.
Right.
Right? That's a
Right.
pretty that's a dope position to have. Um, it's a very powerful tool for anyone that wants to bring down that kind of insight or inspiration from above and make it manifest on earth. And she does just that. But there's a lot of hard work that she put into it. And that is because Saturn is in the sixth house. She's not scared of work. I mean, if you start working at 6 years old on dresses, right? You got the picture. She, work is not foreign to her.
Right.
Um,
Almost,
it's
almost like
almost
little orphan Annie, because she was an
right.
orphan and they were.
I would be surprised, right, if they might even borrowed some of it. I mean, this is serious business. So,
Right.
um, you know, it took her 20 years though, right, to get to get this back, right. So you imagine 20 years, right, of working and basically reaping only 10% of what it is that you put out. That's almost robbery, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one of the other things is that in this particular um, period that she's in, um, she picks up some bad habits, right? In the Mercury Dasha, she definitely acquires. Well, not I'm sorry, excuse me, not in the Mercury Dasha. When she changes from the Mercury Dasha to the Ketu Dasha, she acquires some bad habits, right?
Right.
She picks up she picks up heroin at that time, and
And morphine.
again,
Yeah.
again, right? When these periods pop over, right? Think about it from this perspective. If Rahu takes you into the depths of materialism, right? Into the depths of worldly activities, K2 does the opposite. Takes you out, or you want to escape or to be numbed, right? To a degree. When people experience drugs through Rahu, it's more of an excitement. It's more of
Mm-hmm.
um, a desire to taste and experience, to be in another mindset, mind altering substances. Rahu again is that type of energy that is a dragon, right? So
Mm-hmm.
takes you on a ride, right? But K2 wants to detach. It wants to numb. It wants to go within. It wants to pull away. And so drugs can also be used in the same way or in a different way during a K2 dasha, right? So she starts that in 1935, 1936 starts is the year after. So granted, right, this is when she begins that journey. And so K2 lasts for 7 years. It lasts her until 1943. But she meets some very interesting people during this K2 Dasha, right? And this gets her kind of in a pickle. Right? She is associated with the Nazis, and she does date a German soldier. She does date a German soldier. Uh,
Right.
that's verified. Um, you know, let's consider, right? And I'm not, like I said, I don't have a dog in this race. When you become when you get to a point where you see things from more of a neutral position, you understand that within every negative there's a positive, and within every positive there's a negative. And so she does some things. In fact, they said that she was even going to be considered to take to Winston Churchill um, the Nazi proclamation of, I think, either peace or some type of cooperative agreement or declaration. Right.
Right.
Right. So, considering, I mean, K2 is in the fifth house, right? And the fifth house does deal in politics, right? If you're ever looking to see if someone is politically oriented, the third, the fifth, and the 11th house are very well politically oriented. The seventh house can be as well. But the fifth house, I would say, par excellence, is politics, political orientations, or political associations. And so, the Nazis were a party, right? It's a party, right? Considering it's like the Democratic Party, right? The Republican Party, you had the Nazi Party.
Right.
And so, dating an individual that's a German soldier, right? You get wind of some things. But Germany didn't win the war, right? The Nazis lost, right? And only from a hairline mistake, folks. Don't think that the Nazis got whooped and beat on. And no, it was a mistake that cost them the war. Had they played it differently, it might be a different world that we live in today.
If you want to see what it, there's an interesting show that explores that called "The Man in High Castle."
I heard that. I heard about that.
It's interesting. I got sucked into it a few years ago.
I gotta check it out. I gotta check it
yeah,
out.
yeah, you'll like it or whatnot. But yeah, even from the German side and from the Japanese side, another mistake was made.
Pearl Harbor. Oh no. When the guy went and he was supposed to, that was in, was it Toro?
Tor.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. He made a
Yep.
mistake
He
and
didn't
didn't
follow the
follow through
reading.
with the orders based on the I Ching.
He didn't
Man.
follow that I Ching reading.
And lo and behold, right, things changed. Because had he went through with it, the kamikaze role, and
Right.
felt, we'd have different conversations. That flag that flies now would have a whole lot of more red on it, right, in Japan. So,
Yeah.
these are the small things. I kind of watch a little bit of the Marvel universe, and I'm a little nerd, if you will, at times. But um, they have a thing called a multiverse, right?
Mm.
And it's interesting how one decision can change, right, a lifetime or lifetimes, or even the world in which we live. So, these little small nuances that people take all this and the other, it changes things. It changes things. Dwell in the tear that we have in the Word of God, it means to kind of see around the corner, if you will. But even with that, right, it's still a choice. And
Right.
so, um, like I said, it's an interesting notion just to think that because of the tides that turn very easily and very subtly, right, the Axis powers fell and the Allies won. But again, right, we're talking about Coco Chanel. So with Coco, right, she gets caught up, right, for the sake of time. Like I said, we're not going to go through every single thing, blow by blow by blow, but she gets
Right.
caught up. And the government, the Allied powers, the U.S. says, well, Are you a
Tell
friend
me
or
what you know.
foe? Yeah.
Tell me what you know.
Give me a little bit of that juicy stuff, right? Right. You know you done messed up, don't you?
Shout out to
You know you
him.
done messed up, don't you? Right. So, it's interesting. And I'm not going to label, I don't want people to take this away and say, I set it in stone, because it's not set in stone. You have a will that allows you to be free. Notice I didn't say a free will, right? You have a will that allows you to be free. Well, in the 1940s, right? Right around when Venus begins its 20-year bid, Venus rules the 6th and the 11th house. Now, Sagittarius, and again, I don't want people to run and start looking at Sagittarius in this way, because it has to do with a lot of other things as far as placements and conjunctions and aspects. But remember, her ascendant Lord is conjunct Venus, isn't it?
Right.
That plays a big role, because that means that you yourself have a lot of 6th house and 11th house energies flowing through you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have a lot of connection to those that are enemies and friends, and you yourself, right? She testified, right? Now, I'm not the greatest with German names, right? Right? Some of the names kind of are interesting, but she does testify against one of the Nazis. In fact, in the 1940s, that's when she legally gained control of her perfume, which, interestingly enough, it's a K2 piece. But at the same time, um, she testifies against. I can't. This guy's name is not the easiest name to pronounce, but let me see if I can get it here. Let's see. It's we won't even harper on it. In that particular 1943, right, process, when Venus begins, that's when she switches the game, right? And I'm sorry, 1944 is when the prosecution begins, right? And 44, Churchill, which is England, the Allied powers, Baron Louis
Louis.
de Vroderland, Vroderland,
Vorverland.
de Vroderland. um, he's on trial,
Yeah.
and well, look, Sagittariuses have Venus ruling the 6th and the 11th house. This means a few things. One, it means that they can turn an enemy into a friend. That's a
Right.
power. That is a power. Think about it. This person is your enemy, right? They're against you. And now they're your friend. Now they are your ally. And they also can turn allies into enemies. This is exactly what happened, right? When she's in there and Churchill and the allies say, well, what you gonna do? That Venus, as the ascendant Lord, who she is in the 8th house of change, tumultuous, right, operations, right, metamorphosing, right, turning it from a caterpillar to a butterfly type situation. Venus is
Mm-hmm.
sitting there, and that identity crisis, right, is resolved by her taking the stand against Vorderland. So
Mm-hmm.
now she changes an enemy into a friend, and a friend into
To
an
the
enemy.
enemy. Right.
This is telltale of what many Sagittarius experience in life. And Venus being in that position in the 8th house would easily facilitate it. And here's the thing, it's 0 degrees, it's hairline, it's almost in Gemini.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just a nudge a day before, a day back. It's in Gemini.
Mm-hmm.
We call this, in fact, I was just talking about it today with one of my students. We call this Sandi.
Mm-hmm.
Sandi is what we consider the twilight, right? Between day and night, or night and day. So the person is in between two worlds. They naturally live in the world, she naturally lives in the world of the seventh house, which is partners, right? Associate, not associates, but uh, partners, mates, relationships. And she's had quite a few of those. But at the same time, it's in the eighth house of hidden activities, spies, espionage, right? Considering, right, what she
Mm-hmm.
did with the Nazis.
Right.
So, right, this kind of double agent role takes place with Sagittarius. That Venus ruling the sixth and the 11th can change on a dime, because remember, this is a dual sign. All dual signs have two sides, right? And that two sidedness, I'm not going to say two facedness, but two sidedness
Mm-hmm.
plays out very well when Venus is in an unstable position. That's very unstable, right? It's very can change on a dime, and she does. She drops a dime, right?
Literally. Literally.
Right. So she's protected from persecution, and Venus protects you, right? Venus cures, they say, 100 evils in the chart, meaning that it kind of gives you a way out, a get out of jail free card, if you will. And so, you know, literally, it's proven that, she literally switched up. And from that point on, right, literally, right, Venus rolled her out 20 years. 20 years with Venus is not a bad bid. And this is in the 40s, from the um, 1943 until 1963, right? This is when she made a lot of money, right? This is when she began to really accumulate, and the name Chanel became almost, for all intents and purposes, became a household name.
Right.
Um, the thing is that she was considered at the time, in the earlier times, in the 20s and 30s, even 40s, the richest woman in the world, right? So she was, I mean, you got to consider that. I think she was gifted, or she received $9 million in back pay from the Coco Chanel line, right?
Right.
Considering at that time, this is during women's suffrage. This is during, this is before civil rights. Wasn't even a civil or right, right? It was all left, right? Right.
Right.
For us anyway, right? And women had a long way to go. There was no voting rights. Driving for a woman was unheard of, right? I mean, yeah, they drove, women drove, right? But not in common. Not, you know, I remember back in the day, you would hear a lot of women, like when I was young, and my, grandma and friends and all that, they didn't drive. They didn't drive. And I was shocked. Like, they don't drive? Like, how did it, like, you drive? Well, they don't drive, honey.
My grandma didn't drive. Not really. I
See
mean,
what I'm,
yeah, she didn't drive. No.
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That right there testifies to the level of which women were appreciated, and the level of which women achieved at that time. And there's a lot of women that did different things and made marks, make names for themselves. I'm not saying that it's was um, not didn't happen, but it just wasn't commonplace, right? So for her to have this kind of power and control and leverage with, of course, she's European, so of course, with that, that's a different ball game. But nonetheless, still in all, as a woman, right, that's considerable power to be the
Right.
richest woman in the world, right? Now, I don't know who the richest woman in the world is today. I haven't, tuned into that. But you know, I'm sure in comparison, she would have made a Rihanna or Britain. What's not Britain? What's the other one that came up with her own
Kylie. You said came up with her own line.
yeah, like their own brand. What is the other one? We did a show on her.
Kylie Jenner.
Kylie Jenner, right?
She's
Um,
a Sag ascendant as well,
it's
by
interesting.
the way.
And then we saw uh, Rihanna Pisces ascendant,
Right.
right? You see these Jupiter ruled ascendants, they make impacts, right? When
Mm-hmm.
things are placed in positions in their chart, right? It's just that expansion, that growth, that power that they can literally become all encompassing, that they become a name. Jeff Bezos. I mean, these are,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
this
he's
is
Pisces.
Pisces, right? So, this is Jupiter wealth, right? It grants you that power, grants you those abilities, and grants you knowledge and wisdom and things of that nature. So it does give you a fairly decent life. And consider she had a rough life from the beginning, but remember, it's Sag, which is 4-footed on one half, right? That means that she lands well and ends
Right.
well. Um, so she, had a lot of different things happen that after the war, like I said, during that 20-year period, um, she, for all intents and purposes, folks, changed the look of women at that time. Corsets, and a corset is, kind of like the thing that women would wear, and it would shape your body and that kind of thing. That was
Right.
the way that women dressed. She changed the whole game with that. She came as herself, right? Dressed how she was dressed. And the dresses, not to say the dresses, but the manner in which women dress more so today was because she broke that mold. She shattered that illusion. And it makes sense for the ascendant Lord to be in the eighth house to do so. It's in Ashlesha.
Mm-hmm.
Ashlesha, right, is a nakshatra that has a grip that won't release. It will squeeze the lifeblood out of you if it can. Right? It's like a boa constrictor that has the ability to
It's like the
intertwine.
like the claws of the crab.
Oh, yes, exactly. That's exactly what it is. It's those claws that can clamp, right, and not let go. It has a tenacity to get things done,
Right.
right? But it also can be a little on the side of in the eighth house. It could be on the little side of some unsavory dispositions, because it is what we consider it's ruled by a serpentine energy, right? So
Mm-hmm.
cunning, being witty, being I won't say sneaky, but sly to a degree. This is how she was really set up, how her disposition is. I mean, if you consider she switched the game in midstream and said, "Hey, sorry, Waterland, I gotta go. Right? Good luck." Right?
So y'all's gonna make sure that she land. All right.
Exactly.
Just like
Exactly.
you said.
She gonna be all right.
I'm gonna be straight.
Right. You know. So again, from during the Venus years, she comes out with different collections. Um, you know, she literally comes out with different perfumes. She has a whole line of things that are developed, and this is when Coco Chanel becomes Coco Chanel, as we know it. Because before then, it's just getting started. It's just beginning. She did, like I said, she had different things that she did. She made hats. I mean, we saw that she tried to sing. She worked in a spa. All those things transpired. She opened up different shops. In fact, she had 6 different shops that she opened up. So this is not a woman that was just kind of like, a leech or a bed wench, if you will. She had a
Mm-hmm.
lot of umption and gump about herself to do these things, to make these kind of these brands and these clothes and so forth. So it's not like she just, but people say luck, I call destiny, affords you to meet the right people at the right place at the right time. And
Right.
having those connections with people with money, with people that secured her existence, and that literally at every step of the way, she always had someone to provide the means, right? That's what those planets in the eighth house do. And she is represented by the planet in the eighth house with Venus. So she's very smooth, very assured of her attractiveness, knowing how to maneuver and work the show, as they say, right? Easily can make those things happen where she does get the assistance and help that she needs. And so that's what destiny is, folks, right? It's, spiritual power is an aspect of having things at the right place at the right time with the right people. It's
Right.
effortless, right? It's effortless.
Riding the wave.
Yeah. You don't do anything but step in the door and be you, right? And the things fall in your lap. Right? That's what an aspect of spiritual power is. So, you know, she passes away at the ripe old age of 87, right? She does pass away in a moon dasha. People will be like, well, how is it moon if it's in the third house? And it has nothing to do with the second or seventh. The eighth house doesn't provide you death, right? It doesn't mean you will die. It is the circumstances in which you die, or it's how things coalesce, the right uh, things that need to be set in order for you to die. But it's not the when, it's the how.
Hmm.
And so Jupiter and Venus being in the eighth house definitely gives her the ability to kind of have a very um, mild mannered exit. Um, and again, when you look back at all of the dresses that she created, all of the things that she produced, the jewelry, the bags, the perfume, she had a whole world for women, right? That she created. Again, the ascendant Lord being with the what planet? The what planet? Venus,
Venus.
planet of beauty, planet of
Hmm.
attraction, the planet of being considered want to be wanted, right? And these things is exactly what produced that. And this is something that is very different from pre Coco Chanel to post Coco Chanel. But the exit she made was one in which that she would be remembered. She would be right, literally. I mean, I don't know a woman. I know men that may not know Coco Chanel, but I don't know a woman that doesn't. Right? Not in this day
Right.
and age, considering what we're
Nah.
dealing with social media. Right?
Right. Right.
The big. So she dies in a moon dasha. The moon is in the third house, but the third house is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn also rules the second house, which is the
Right.
house of death. Right, the house of death, I would say, out of all of them, is actually the second. Right, seventh is right there with it, of course, close neck and neck. But I've seen second house produce more exits than the seventh, believe it or not. Right.
Hmm.
So, you know, this is her life in a nutshell, right? And you can more than welcome to explore and really learn how her life was patterned when she made all of the influences as far as her legacy as a clothes maker, right? As a designer. But um, she um, was basically living her normal life. She went to bed and that was it.
Right. Not a bad way to go.
Not a bad way to. Again, Jupiter and Venus provide the circumstances, right, of death. And considering Jupiter also rules the fourth what? Fourth house of home, right? So she died in her what? In her home,
Um. Right.
right? So we'll leave Coco Chanel, right, with that. we'll definitely, not forget. I'm sure in the future, even in 20 or 30 years from now, I'm sure Coco Chanel will still be a hot item, right?
Mm-hmm.
Considering the economy is still at play, right? But yeah, it's definitely interesting when you have these kind of abilities to see into the life of an individual. Of course, hindsight is always 2020, but it matches so perfectly. You can't deny the abilities and powers of Jyotish. So I do I did enjoy and I do enjoy doing these types of podcasts because it really gives credence to what we study and what we practice.
Indeed. So I see in here there's a quote. Her last words to her mate was, "You see, this is how you die."
Wow.
Because she was feeling ill, went to bed early. I guess she knew it. She was like, "You see, this is how you die."
Precognizance of the ability to know when you're gonna die.
Right.
Send the Lord in the eighth house. That's crazy right there, right? That's
Indeed.
crazy, right? So with that, I think we did her some justice, pulling out the good, the bad, and the indifferent with her. Like I said, go check out for yourself and line it up. Right, take out if you have any way to look at dashas on your phone or on your computer. Take a look and go side by side in it. Like wow, like every time you see it, it's just repetitious over. And when you got that birth time that's dead on, it's repetitious. You're gonna see the dashas lead into this every single time.
Indeed. 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 As yeah, like I said, it's always interesting. I like, when you see these people and stuff like that, interesting lives, and look at their chart. It's just, yeah, man. Yeah, man. So I definitely, yeah, that's definitely a good practice, looking at those dashas and matching them and stuff like that. Cause that, yeah, it's telling. It's
Yes,
telling.
it is. Yes, it is.
In, indeed, indeed. Well, as usual, this episode was brought to you by Push It Forward Media Group, Capricorn Astrology, and the good folks over there on Patreon or whatnot. Thank you to everybody that's tuning in live and different things like that. Rod, you got any announcement, anything you want to say before we officially check out?
No, sir.
Indeed. Well, thank you all for tuning in. We will be back next week with another great episode. And we're out. Peace.
Peace.